pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All members are present except for Greg. Minutes of September 16th. Does everyone have those minutes? Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I would have a discussion.
You are.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And no abstentions. Oh, one abstention.
Oh, no, I was there for the 16th.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong page. Minutes of October 7th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one
Abstain.
abstention. Okay. Is there any public comment? Yes, sir.
I noticed in the agenda that the public comment comes at the first part of the meeting. And as a concerned citizen, I feel that the public should be permitted to make public comment after the board has proceeded through their business to make the public comments at a later time in the agenda. Basically, after you have discussed your business with these 7 and 8 on the agenda, I feel that it would benefit not only the committee, but the public to be able to comment later in the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Scott Massey. I am the president of Oakleaf Marina on Ferry Road. I'm here on behalf of all the marine communities and the voters in town to support item 7 on your agenda. Do you wish to have those comments now or wait until after that presentation?
Well, given the first comment, I suppose we could entertain a motion to add public comment at the end of the selectmen's report.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wonder if, because we'll be voting on 7 and 8.
Sorry, you might want to hear a comment now.
Yeah. Because we'll be voting on 7 and 8.
Right, so that's a good point.
But you can add it to the motion.
Right.
You can do the motion and personal comment, just make a note motion.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second.
All right. All those in favor of adding to the agenda public comment after item 9 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So, to answer your question, you can certainly make public comment now because we're still in the public comment section on the agenda, and there'll be additional public comment later. So, entirely up to
We'll
you.
reserve to wait for later. Thank you.
So are you gonna allow public comment before you vote on the grant? Or
No.
if people wanted to comment on the grant now, do you want them to talk now?
If you want to comment on any of the agenda items, now would be the time.
Right. So, very briefly, I'd like to offer my opinion based on my position at Oakleaf Marina, as well as the 10 marinas and the 2,500 voters that call Saybrook home, to have you seriously consider and support the request from the Department of Police Services to accept this grant, to retire the existing asset that has outlived its useful life, and to replace it with what they are requesting. We are fortunate enough to be able to provide services to the town regarding this boat. I will tell you that she has probably reached the end of her useful life. This is the replacement of a vital asset that provides security to a very large economic section of town, Old Saybrook can be considered maybe the boating capital of Connecticut. It's an important part of what we do. It's important to all of the boaters that call Old Saybrook home, and we strongly would suggest from all of the marinas and all of the marine communities that you support the request from the Department of Police Services to replace this asset.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Palmieri. I'm Old Saybrook resident. I live at 37 Pennywise Lane. And I'm really here on behalf of my job, which is I am the security manager at Plum Island Animal Disease Center. And it's my understanding that there is an agenda item up for vote regarding a police boat, or the funding of a police boat, or providing a balance of funding for a police boat based on getting a grant, I believe from the Department of Homeland Security. And I would just like to emphasize, I guess, selfishly, that the Old Saybrook Police Department has provided a very needed service to the Department of Homeland Security in Plum Island over the last 3 to 4 years in securing our parking area, helping us to secure our boats, providing services to our workers. We have over 100 workers every day that come to Old Saybrook from the surrounding communities and get on our boat and go up Plum Island and provide a research mission out there. We rely very heavily upon law enforcement services of the Old Saybrook Police Department to help us provide safety and security for those people. I also would like to say, just in understanding the federal budget situation and the fact that Old Saybrook did do a lot of work in getting this grant from Homeland Security, that I think it would be counterproductive to walk away from it in these times. We do get support from our other facility in New York. They actually have 3 police boats. One of them has been funded by the Department of Homeland Security for a grant, similar grant, and they provide help to us at Plum Island. So I guess I just want to reinforce the importance of Old Saybrook Police Department, the law enforcement services, the help that they provide us in protecting our employees and our staff coming to work, our assets at the Harbor One Marina. We're there 4 nights a week. We have a security officer there, but we also rely on the police department to augment our security services there to help us. And I hope that you consider that when you make the decision to help upgrade this asset to help us provide the service that we do to the country out of Plum Island.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Grant Westerson. I've worked on the waterfront in Old Saybrook for almost 50 years. And as you're all well aware, I'm fairly close to the operation of this existing boat. A few things to point out, just to remind you, things that you're well aware of, I'm sure, but Saybrook enjoys probably one of the longest waterfronts of any other town or municipality in Connecticut. 17 miles, I think, thereabouts. And that's probably one of the reasons why we have the type of life that we have in Old Saybrook, and the property values, and the draw that we get from people throughout the state and throughout the region that come to town. The tax structures on our waterfront reflect the ability for people to get closely to the water. If you took 5 or 6 properties on North Cove Road and moved them, those same properties up to Cinnamon Ridge, the differential in taxes collected by this town would probably pay for this $90,000 that we're looking for. That's how little impact it would have on the town for what it truly gives us. I'd also like to point out that this boat that's been put together, and you'll certainly hear about it from the proposal that the police are going to do in a couple of minutes. This is not a boat that we want. This is a boat that we need. It's a boat that's designed to handle the kind of waters and the kind of areas that this boat will serve, not only the river, but close areas of Long Island Sound. The boat that we've been existing for the last 20 years is really undersized. and it's been a problem at times. So I hope you'll give serious consideration to this. It's an opportunity for the town to really win a big one with Homeland Security and get something 3/4 paid for that we don't have to jump up and down and trying to find the funding for. So it's a great buy for the town, and I think it's a responsibility that the town has. We've got a waterfront liability. We need to address that liability, and this vote will really do that.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Finch?
Bob Finch, Chairman of the Police Commission. Although because of the timing of when we received the grant, your meeting and then our next meeting, we have not officially voted on this particular matter. It's been a long time in coming, been discussed many times, and I just want to let you know that the Police Commission has always been very favorable of supporting it, number one. Number two, being a voter, $90,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when it comes to boats, anybody is a voter, it doesn't buy you what you think it's going to buy. A 20-foot family outboard can run $40,000, $45,000 now easily. So if we don't take advantage of this and we have to go out and replace a police boat totally town funded at some point in the not too far future, because it's one of these days it just isn't going to go.
We got towed in.
We got towed in recently. That's kind of embarrassing, a heavy police boat being towed in. We would end up spending significantly more money than this and getting a lot less boat than we're going to get through this. So just thought I'd add those comments.
Thank you. Any other additional public comment? Yes, sir.
I am a voter, and I have a vote, and I've had a vote for the last 10 years down at between the bridges. So far, since the beginning of the new government and the beginning of this finance board, looking after the interests of the old Saybrook taxpayers, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. One, we spent $6 million on a new town hall. We spent $10 million on a new police station. We spent $1.5 million on a plastic football field. We spent $12 million, or are in the process of spending the best of $12 million on the upkeep of the schools. I'm not arguing that the upkeep of the schools is necessary, nor am I arguing that you should maintain the properties that belong to the town. But then along comes the preserve. Now, the preserve isn't something that that old Saybrook had to have, but it was an excellent proposition, and it might have come at a little inconvenient time. So, you know, okay, that's one for the other side. Then we get all these police cars with the stripes down the side and the gangster cars, and now we want a 400 horsepower police boat so that we can actually look like Crockett and Tubbs out of Miami Vice. We don't need a police boat. We've already got a fireboat that we spend $472,000 on. Now, I spent a lot of time on the water up and down the Connecticut River, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't see anything useful that the Old Saybrook police do. I also note that Old Lyme didn't buy a fireboat, and they didn't buy a police boat. Well, why should they when you're going to do it? You know, that's $1 million. It just isn't necessary. You don't need a police boat. But you do need to look after the fabric of the town, and you do need to look after education. And as for the Taj Mahal at $10 million, well, you know, do you really think that people in Old Saybrook think this is sensible control of costs? So, do you really need it? The finance board are the people who should put their foot down, because obviously the management in Old Saybrook isn't prepared to. what they should do. We have too many police here, we have too many police cars. They're, if you look at the crime reports, they're not justified. They're harassing the citizens of Old Saybrook, and I won't get into it here, but I have a number of issues where it's just unnecessary, pushy, overbearing policing in the town for the number of people that live in this town and the crime rate that exists in this town. So, but nobody ever seems to be able to say stop. I'm asking the Board of Finance to say no.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Gene Heine, I'm Detective Sergeant of the Police Department, I run the Marine Division. Fire Department does one job, the Police Department does another. They don't go out and write tickets, we do. If you have a boat at the Between the Bridges Marina, you know the damage that's been caused by some of the boats down there because the big boats going through the marinas causing wakes. Old Line has 2 police boats, but they don't have the people to run. One of them isn't even in the water. Same with DEP, they have a boat in the water, but they don't have the people to run. 20 years ago, when I took over this division, I was writing 20 and 30 tickets a day because nobody was out there writing tickets. Now I'm lucky to write 5, which is good that we're out there to stop people from causing damage to boats at Between the Bridges Marina when we're out there. And I've had a number of boats at Between the Bridges Marina damaged this year. So talk to your neighbors. So if you're going to give them information to make an informed decision, make sure it's correct.
Thank you.
You want me to respond, or?
You can.
Well, go ahead. I don't want this to be
You've heard
debate.
You've heard my view on it. I don't agree with that statement. I do not believe that there's been the level of marine crime that's being indicated here. I haven't seen it. I'm retired, so I'm not on it like Sunday or anything. Okay.
No, you're talking about crime, I'm glad you are.
No,
Because we have had crime at your marina, we've had
I
boats
don't want
stolen,
to.
we've had outboard drives stolen, and we've had sailboats stolen. The worst towns that have got it are the towns around us that don't have an active marine patrol. We've only had 2 cases. We've had 2 cases at your marina where people have had gas stolen. Luckily, you're not one of them. But because of our proactive patrols, everybody else around us is getting killed. Essex in one night had 9 boat motors stolen. Clinton over the weekend has had 2. I can
Thank
go
you.
on, but.
Thank you.
I know you.
For right now, is there any other public comment? I don't want this to be in a ping pong game.
No, I'm not talking to the police, I'm talking to the Board of Finance.
My-
The Board of Finance is responsible for what's spent for the taxpayers, not the police force.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, hearing none. We will move to the Board of Education report. The Board of Ed, no one from the Board of Ed is here this evening because there was a meeting of their turf committee early on this evening. I was there. They're still meeting, actually. So in lieu of the superintendent or director of operations, facilities, and finance showing up tonight, they sent this letter. Does everyone have a copy of it? I fully expect that they will be here for our next meeting. So they wanted to send this along.
You want to read those, read that in the minutes so that you can just have her put those in the minutes?
You put this in the minutes?
I will do that.
Great.
I'd be happy to.
Great. Okay.
I like this one.
Item number 7. Department of Police Services. Discussion of the court security grant and discussion of possible action to recommend town meeting and appropriation of $361,570. Court security grant to be matched by a town share in the amount of $90,393 for the purchase of a police boat. The total appropriation is the aforementioned $361,570. Whom from the Department of Police Services would like to address us?
I guess I'll start.
Chief.
Mr. Chair. I gotta tell you right off the bat, Brad's throwing me off from being on this side of you instead of that side of you.
Well, we tried to do that on purpose.
A little weird. So, good evening. The good news about this is I won't be the one doing the actual presentation. You hear enough from me during budget season, so we're gonna give it to 2 subject matter experts tonight who actually worked and prepared the grant. Here's what the Board of Finance needs to know, and I'm certainly not one to pull any punches. Usually the one to give you the straight information and the straight shot that sometimes is unwelcomed or unwanted. But here's the deal. For some reason, there's a lot of emotion over this. So let me give you just a couple of facts. First of all, the Marine Patrol in Old Saybrook is nothing new. We've had it for a long time. In fact, I see Detective Barnes in the back of the room. When he was in high school, he worked on our second Marine boat, sitting in one of the coves on the weekends to protect it. So the Marine Patrol has been around for just a little bit. You're going to hear in the presentation that the boat that we currently have was surplus equipment from the federal government. So we didn't even get that new. And you're going to hear about the age of the boat, you're going to hear about the condition of the boat, and why the boat needs to be replaced. People on this board that have tenure have heard me over the past 4 years come to you during the budget process and ask you to put funds aside in some sort of sinking fund in our marine capital budget for the replacement of a new boat. Each and every time we sought to do that, this board and other boards have decided, no. Go out and pursue this grant you're talking about, and when you get the grant, come back and see us. Okay, we said. We applied for the port security grant last year. We did not get it. I think I know why we didn't get it. If you close your eyes and think as a Board of Finance, all the federal aid that we got last year, I think sometimes that's looked at by the federal government. How much federal tax dollars are going into one community? We applied again this year, and we were successful. So unlike police chiefs maybe in other towns that will come to a Board of Finance or a Board of Selectmen and say, I have a problem, I need funding. I'm coming to you and saying, I've had the problem that I've had for a while, and oh yeah, we found a fiscally responsible way to fix the problem. Tonight you're going to hear from Sergeant Walsh and Sergeant DePerry, who were assigned as part of our Marine Strategic Planning Committee, and they'll go through the history of that in the presentation, to write this federal grant. 75% of the cost of the vessel that is specified and mandated as part of the grant process, we will receive from the federal government. That is something that we as a town should celebrate. All these other grants that we talk about, $1 million for North Main Street, the seawalls, mini golf, all these things, we need to start celebrating the fact that federal tax dollars are coming back to us in Old Saybrook instead of going to other communities. Our boat, as represented by some members of the public tonight, is a need, not a want. I need a boat to satisfy the police mission. There is no one in this room, however eloquently they want to speak or non-eloquently they want to speak, that has the responsibility to make sure that the law enforcement mission is satisfied in the town of Old Saybrook, other than me. That's my responsibility. Carl's responsibility when he took the oath for office is to make sure that we provide for the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. Well, the health, safety, and welfare extends into our waterways, extends into the mouth of the Connecticut River, extends into our 9 marinas, extends into the 400 plus slips and all of the marinas. That's a significant part of policing. If you think we don't go to domestics on the water and intercede BUIs, people boating under the influence, or make drug arrests on the water or in marinas, you're crazy. We have people that live on boats, in dry dock, some of them, and some of them out anchored in the cove. It's our responsibility to help them. We are not the fire department. We don't put out fires, but we do save lives. We are the medical first responders for the town of Old Saybrook, which includes on the water. So up until this meeting, I've heard all sorts of crazy things. You just spent $400,000 getting new cars. Why do you need a boat? The cars don't float. They don't help me on the water, in the sound, or in the river. They don't. You're building a $10 million police department. I know. That also can't be taken there. And we didn't price out the building. So all these things have bad timing. And when I told Carl about the grant, I walked in his office, and the first thing I said to the first selectman is, sorry, I know I have crappy timing. Because it seems like time and time again, all he's hearing or all you're hearing is what the police department needs funding for. I get that. I understand that. I need you to take the emotion out of this. I need you, quite frankly, with all due respect, to take the politics out of public safety. Take a step back and think. Do we have a need to police the waterways? The answer is yes. Have we always policed the waterways? The answer is yes. Is the equipment that we use to do that failing? The answer is yes. Can we get a almost $400,000 asset for 90 grand? Yes. Is that a deal? You betcha. So I'd like to introduce Sergeant DePerry and Sergeant Walsh to bring us through the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sergeant Walsh. Obviously, this is Sergeant DePerry. Good evening. So the chief was nice enough to enlist myself and Sergeant DePerry on the Marine Division Strategic Planning Committee. This was established back in May 2012.
Excuse me, Sergeant?
Yes.
The people standing in the back, if they'd like to come up and stand behind us so they can see better, that would be appropriate, I think.
Sure. Everybody like to move? We'll try not to walk in front of you too much, but obviously we have to address the board. So as I was saying, the chief assigned several of us to a Marine Strategic Planning Committee after a mid-year motor failure of the current boat. He assigned us to look at the equipment, the current vessel, and any future needs, the personnel in terms of minimum standards and training, budget to identify funding sources, obviously that's why we're here today, develop different operational guidelines, and then develop a schedule for the Marine Patrol to get newer members, younger guys out on patrol. The committee itself was made up of Detective Sergeant Heine, who spoke. He's our co-chair of the committee. He's been the Marine Division commander for over 20 years. We have Master Sergeant Jay Rankin with 40 years boating experience. He's a licensed captain. Myself and Sergeant DePerry have numerous years boating experience, boat repair experience. And then we have Scott Massey and Grant Westerson, both town residents and subject matter experts. So yes, 2 police officers are addressing you today, but we are truly subject matter experts in this. So I've basically been a boater all my life. I was in the marine industry prior to being a police officer. So it's something we have a passion for. Obviously, our biggest concern and our biggest need was our current Marine One, our current Marine vessel. That was a hull built in 1993 for the U.S. Coast Guard and obtained at no cost by the department with no motor and a hole in the bottom of it. Basically, we built that boat from scratch in the mid-90s to what it is today, which means we've piecemealed that boat together. You can't go buy that boat anywhere. It's basically irreplaceable because it's just one system stuck on top of another system. It has all outdated electronics, has the original 1997 radar unit. It's just really an outdated piece of equipment that we've made the best use out of. Some of the current issues with the boat, obviously you can see the visibility is quite poor because it has a plastic shelter that we put in place for foul weather because it's an open center console style boat. There's very limited deck space. We cannot transport any injured parties on that boat. And when you look at the green, amber, red GAR assessment, which is the risk assessment that we use, we follow the Coast Guard model. So green, amber, red, like a stoplight. Green you go, red you stop. We have to look at the sea conditions, the weather conditions, the boat experience when the call comes in. And unfortunately, these calls aren't Saturdays at noon. It's 2 a.m., 3 a.m., during storms, during weather conditions. And we're truly limited in terms of when this boat can go out and make a rescue. We talked with one of the Plum Island ferry captains, and he joked how easy it would be to sink our boat with his weight just of that one vessel. So this boat has some issues and some concerns to it. Again, the outdated electronic and communications, sure, we'd love to upgrade this. There's no way to do it. There's no room to do it without being truly spending so much more money than is necessary. You can see the holes in the back of the console, and just no room for anything. A major concern is the paint and the aluminum corrosion that's occurred over the 20-some years of the vessel. You can see by the pictures, the paint and the aluminum is blistering. And we can say, wow, that looks serious, but we don't know how serious it is until we sandblast this boat down to bare aluminum and then do assessment of it. So we can say, okay, let's repaint this boat for, $25,000, but we don't know what that's going to be until it's truly bare aluminum, and then we have to get the real estimate. Again, the engine has some concerns. We did get towed in recently. The current motor does have only 800 hours on it. It's only 2 years old, but that is a rebuilt motor and a rebuilt outdrive because 2 years ago we had to do it on the cheap because it was a mid-year issue. The motor catch on the right-hand side is losing paint, losing the sound downer, which creates some sound issues for operation. And then in addition to the paint bubbling, we have a non-skid failure on the deck. So the decks are slippery when wet, and obviously boats are in the water, so they're going to get wet. Leaking frames, bubbling decks. Just some real major concerns with the current boat.
So for funding sources, obviously, when we developed this strategic planning committee, we took a look at the state of our current boat. We started looking at how we're going to replace the current boat. The grant out there is the FEMA Port Security Grant. It's a national grant that police and fire departments apply for, and they have extensive funding. So some of the issues that FEMA looks at when they're taking a look at your grant for funding is prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. There's actually categories for each port that Old Saybrook has a certain risk assessment for this port. They look at area capabilities around you, and the first year that we applied for the grant, obviously there was a lot of federal money out there, and we were bluntly told that we didn't put in any mitigation systems for the infrastructure that we have here in Old Saybrook. So this year of funding, we took a look at what we did not include in the grant, and we put in some extra systems that support the federal mission, and we were awarded the funding. What we looked for in a boat, we'll go into a little bit more in the next few slides, but we looked for a functional boat. There's a bunch of boats out there that were recently awarded federal money that just don't fit in Old Saybrook. We run an active marine patrol. We're out there every weekend during the summer, and we have been since I started working here in '98. I've had some experience with our current vessel, and we've also used our current vessel during a couple of NASBL tactical boaters training courses, and it is not capable of what a police boat should be capable of. So we took a look at weather, we took a look at response, and we took a look at the projects that were going on around the state. So here are some of the funded boats. So 2011, Fairfield got funded for a 33-foot safe boat. That's the boat on the top left. Waterford and East Lyme decided to go to a regional boat. They went with a 28-foot Sea Ark, $520,000 in their grant. So you look at these two boats, and we think about the Connecticut River and the Long Island Sound. They don't fit in with the mission of our police department. So we're looking at these funded boats, and we're trying to decide where we're going with our Marine Patrol. That's what our strategic planning committee was for. Waterford, East Lyme, regional type program. We're directly in communication with the people who run those vessels. It's a nightmare for the communication between the two town police departments. They have to have one guy from each town. Often the people don't show up. They call in sick. There's nobody else to fill the vessel. They're ordering guys in on overtime to come in and fill a Marine Patrol system. That's a whole other avenue that we're not going to talk about tonight. We're simply talking about the boat. Stonington this past year got awarded $375,000 for a 27-foot safe boat. Again, not quite the structure and design that we're looking for in Old Saybrook. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about workability. Milford, just this past year, 34-foot North River, $375,000. The Port Security Grant is looking to fund these vessels due to their capabilities. So those are some of the things that we took a look at when we were writing this grant the second time around this year. So what we were looking for as a committee was a workable platform, a center console style vessel with a full enclosure for that 24/7 capability, an electronic enhancement which is required. The electronic package stipulations are required in the grant. Their sonar systems and their radar systems, they have certain stipulations on their requirements. Electronics, which I just mentioned, and ease of operation. We also looked at the power systems. The grant requires high-speed, quick response capability. So they don't require a slow-speed cruiser boat. They require high-speed, quick response capability. We looked at different power systems in the terms of engine maintenance and cost effectiveness, and we looked at the budget. We looked at how a boat in the future is going to be kept up with. So we looked for a functional boat as opposed to some of those boats that you saw that were funded in other towns that are just, from our standpoint, not functional, and they're going to require a lot more upkeep than we want to do. We don't want to spend a lot of money every year on upkeep. So we looked at our area of operations, what our local weather is, what our sea conditions are, and as Sergeant Walsh said, we're not going out on a Saturday afternoon to help somebody out. We're not going out sunny 80-degree day. When we do get calls for service, and we've all been on them in the middle of the night, going out to meet a barge with an injured party on there, you can't see. The weather conditions are not perfect. It can be a nightmare, and it can be unsafe for us in our current vessel. We're looking for a vessel that is safe for all of us, and it obviously would be mission ready. FEMA requirements, which we talked about, some of the things that we failed to elaborate on in our first grant were some of the IED detection devices and the maritime domain awareness tools that we have written into this grant, which enabled us to get the funding. In the budget and the design of the OSPD boat to meet the FEMA operations.
Sergeant,
Yes,
can you tell me what those abbreviations mean?
sure. Which ones?
CBR&E.
CBRN,
IED, the CBRNE, and...
improvised explosive device, and chemical-borne radioactive nuclear explosive devices.
So that's the portion of the grant that is required. So last year we did not request that package. So this year we added basically bomb detection equipment, which allows the grant to be funded.
And do you want the questions at the end of your presentation or during the presentations?
If you have a question, go ahead and ask it.
How does this fit in with the mitigation if this is part of what you changed from last year?
Mitigation, this is the detection portion. So if we get a call for service, if the Coast Guard calls us and says, we have a chemical-borne threat at one of your local marinas, we want you guys to go out and assist us. We have a detection device, which we've written into this grant. It's one device, which we would go out, and it's a handheld device, and we would go out and attempt to detect where, or secure and make sure that everybody knows that area is safe with this equipment. And the last part, obviously, is the budget, which is why we're here today. Good?
So what we presented to FEMA was a sustainment and capability upgrade of the old Saybrook Marine Patrol. So this isn't a whole new program. We're simply looking to upgrade our boat. We're not going to do anything different other than have a new patrol boat out there. Yes, there's going to be some training on the vessel, but this is just going to be the same program we have with a new boat. So that's what we're looking at.
Nice.
So this is our service population. This boat was in the Connecticut River 2 weeks ago. What we came up with is a 28-foot center console style dual outboard quick response vessel that meets the needs of the town and meets the needs of the FEMA grant, which allows us to have the funding. So again, it's a 3-sided pilot house. It's going to have a full sensor suite with radar, GPS, flare, truly state-of-the-art electronics that's going to carry us to any emergency 24/7, 365. Twin 300 Mercury Verado motors, same motor as the fireboat, docked near each other. It's going to allow for quicker repairs of either vessel if needed with duplicity of services. And basically a boat that's really going to carry us for the next 20, 25 years. The finish is going to be bare aluminum, painted non-skid decks. It'll come with a trailer and delivered. So this is a boat, when it shows up here, we go on patrol the next day. There's no further expenses, there's no further needs other than getting on the boat and going. It's a fully equipped, fully delivered boat. Stanford has essentially a similar boat, a little bit different doghouse, obviously different paint scheme and electronics, but that's essentially the boat that we hope to spec out moving forward. Cost breakdown of the boat. Obviously, there are components and systems that FEMA requires. So when you look at, for example, the IED detection equipment, that's a $23,000 package that has to be included in the boat. Power systems is going to include, the heat and the AC. Again, it's going to make it a 24/7, 365 package. So again, total cost, fully equipped, delivered, turnkey, ready to go, $361 with the town cost share of $90,000. Obviously, everybody wants to know you're buying a bigger vessel. It's 5 feet bigger. It's got 2 motors. What kind of costs are we going to see moving forward year to year? We were able to reach out to Mr. Massey at Oakley. He was able to give us an estimate for commissioning, winterizing, dockage, storage, with estimates for the year. So you look at that and say, what does that mean? Comparing it to the current budget year numbers, and then with the Oakley upgrade estimates and the gas upgrade estimates, yes, there are 2 motors versus 1, but they are more fuel efficient. So we took a 166, looking at the numbers to come up with the increase for fuel usage. We're estimating about $7,000 on a yearly basis for an increased maintenance budget. So, do you have a question? So you're gonna.
So you're just saying it's what are we spending now for the maintenance?
So budgeted for the police vessel, including personnel, is $55,000. Next year, we're estimating around $62,000. So again, our personnel hours aren't going to change, dollars aren't going to change. But we're looking at fuel, obviously, and then general maintenance. Shouldn't be much.
Why does the dockage go down?
So dockage goes down. Obviously, when we look at this year's budget numbers, general maintenance, winterization, dockage is all lumped in. Mr. Massey gave me dockage at $3,450. I don't know, that includes haul out, storage. So it was just the breakdown of it. And that's basically the majority of the presentation. So the FEMA timeline is a pretty rapid one, or what we presented to them was a relatively rapid timeline. It's a 24-month grant that has to be closed out within 24 months. But they expect the vessel used and underway within that time. But as you can see, we're hoping for a 20-year investment with this project.
And with their timeline, there's obviously reporting requirements along the way. So each one of those different stipulations has reporting requirements along with the grant.
You can have a clerk of the works to monitor the boat progress and report back to the town?
We certainly can. Obviously, part of the FEMA grant, again, is a reporting for expenses on a quarterly basis.
So we ourselves are going to go, so first of all, this goes out to bid, right? You guys done the presentation?
Yeah.
Great. So this will eventually go out to bid. When it comes back from that, we're kind of hopeful that some of this goes locally. We don't have any shipbuilding yards in Old Saybrook, but there are some in Connecticut. So unlike the fireboat that got built in California, right? Got built in California, the guys had to travel out there kind of a long distance to take a look at that. We're hoping that it's going to be closer so we can keep going up and monitoring that. But certainly when we got a new fire vessel, we buy a new fire truck that costs more than this. We don't hire a clerk of the works to do that. We have our own subject matter experts take care of that. Before we conclude and open it up for conversation, Chief Dunn couldn't be here tonight. He's actually on the plane right now, returning from Disney, the Lucky Duck. But he did want me to read this letter to you, and I have copies and one for you to enter into that. You have that already. Let me read it for you. Dear members of the Board of Finance, as Chief of the Old Saybrook Fire Department, on behalf of the department, I would like to officially support the replacement for the Old Saybrook police boat and the matching town funds for the federal grant they received. The fireboat sunk in March of 2008. The replacement cost approximately $420,000. Insurance and the auction of the former boat brought in $183,000, leaving the town to fund $237,000. The new police boat cost $361,000, of which $271,000 comes from federal funds. The remaining $90,000 comes from the town. I rounded those numbers for you.
Yeah.
The fire department applied for grants to replace our boat in 2008. At that time, they were not available. The police department and the town of Old Saybrook is very fortunate that this grant exists, and they will be the beneficiary. As with the fire boat, the police department boat often responds to life-threatening emergencies on the water in the worst weather environments. If you haven't seen the condition of the current police boat, I encourage you to go down to the docks and view it. While often said tongue-in-cheek among the firefighters, it's only a matter of time before the current police boat will need to be rescued by the fire boat. So, here's what we got to think about. We do live in Old Saybrook. We're a coastal town. Where the river meets the sound is a tagline we like to use. Real estate agents boast about our location and the marine environment that we enjoy. The town of Old Saybrook tax base enjoys 9 marinas and transient boat traffic. Our local merchants enjoy having those folks dock their boat and come eat in our restaurants and shop in our stores. It is an important asset. The police boat and the fire department boat have 2 different missions, but sometimes their missions are the same. If we have a boating accident with injuries, we both go. Because as you know, although some people think I do, no one can stand on the water. So you have to work off of boats to effect the rescue and investigate the scene. That takes a village. So it takes not only the police boat from Old Saybrook and the fire boat from Old Saybrook, but sometimes boats from neighboring communities, and sometimes we have to go help them. Because the marine environment is an extremely unique environment to police and protect. So you heard a great job done by the sergeants. The Marine Strategic Planning Committee has done a phenomenal job, and quite frankly, I hope that you're just at least a little bit impressed, and you don't have to admit it publicly, that we have the talent amongst our regular patrol staff, not only to do this, but to put together a presentation and come and speak to a board of your caliber. This doesn't happen in a lot of towns. So I like to embrace the fact that we have that talent. I like to embrace the fact that we have a need, and we found a fiscally responsible way to meet that need. So myself and the committee, I don't know much about boats other than we need one. So if you have a technical boating question, I'm going to turn those questions over to our licensed Coast Guard captains. Sergeant Walsh forgot to mention that today he was notified that he just received his captain's license, which is a really big to-do. And let me leave you with this. When they first came to me with the grant last year, and I saw all the requirements, I said, bomb detection, nuclear explosion, guys, listen. As your emergency management director, as your police chief, I get the whole thing, but please, FEMA requires it. And what they're trying to do is build a nation of public safety assets that are ready to respond to anything. If you close your eyes and think about what we have in Old Saybrook, it's kind of daunting. So other than Sergeant Stevenson, who worked with us and his day job, night job, with the Plum Island Ferry, you'd be shocked at the resources that we have in town. The Baldwin Bridge, the Railroad Bridge, the Plum Island Ferry. Jim, I appreciate you coming tonight. You know, there's 2 police departments in the nation that assist with Plum Island. Orion Point in New York and Old Saybrook, Connecticut. That's it. The amount of train traffic that we get and freight traffic and the stuff that's going over those rail lines is daunting. We have occasional security threats on our bridges, and we have to go out. Why doesn't the Coast Guard? Because the Coast Guard calls us. So you don't know how many times in the summer months, or the height of the summer months, we'll get a call from New London or New Haven that says, we have a search and rescue mission, we can't get there for 40 minutes to an hour. Can you go out? And we do, because the marine community has to help one another. I've heard all sorts of things leading up to tonight. How come this town has a boat and this town doesn't have a boat, and why Madison doesn't have a police department boat? Why don't they have a boat? Because they have no marinas. We have 9. They don't have the mouth. We do. I'm not concerned about other towns, folks. My job is to police Old Saybrook, and your job is to give me the assets to satisfy those missions. So I appreciate your attention tonight, and again, we're open to any comments or questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Make it for the boaters. Make it for the boaters.
I think it's cool for you. I heard words like federal mission, reorganization in your letter, and also the IED, $23,000, has to be in the boat. So what I'm thinking is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't get the grant unless you expand your horizon of service. Is that true?
Let me
So
answer it in a
other words,
different
you're
way.
not only covering Old Saybrook, you're covering any call you get around surrounding towns.
Yes and no. The federal government has said for the Port of Old Saybrook, for the captain of the port to sign off on this grant, to get it forwarded to FEMA, because remember the Coast Guard now is part of the Federal Department of Homeland Security. They have to look at our asset and what Old Saybrook brings to our one marine asset. So when they look at Old Saybrook, they look at the mouth of the river, 9 marinas, the Amtrak Bridge, the Baldwin Bridge, the Plum Island Ferry. Those significant assets, both state and federal, require now that level of preparedness. If we did not have those things, that would not have been required of us in Old Saybrook. So I think, and I know it's tough to do, and I know it sounds great coming from me, you can roll your eyes, you would be shocked, and I know we can't disclose stuff, but you would be shocked at the things that we have to manage and deal with on a daily basis regarding that Homeland Security mission. More than you can imagine.
So to get any kind of help from the federal government, you have to have all this equipment, which in time will require training, which will add to our costs, correct? You don't
So-
get warranties on any of the equipment.
We do get warranties on the equipment, and there'll be initial training, and then there'll be further grants that we can apply for, federal grants, that allow the federal government to assist us in sustaining the asset that we were able to get using their funding. So I can't apply for that until I get the initial asset, but we intend to apply for those. And the training is also included in this grant.
You need those 2 engines on that boat to increase?
It has to be, and I hate the terms, the quick response, go fast. They're not politically savvy terms. If it was up to me, I'd choose different terms. But they want a boat that's not going to putt somewhere to get to an emergency. They want a boat that's going to go.
Because I don't like the fact that you're increasing your operational costs. You're already 27% of the total budget, excluding the debt service of the town, of the general operation budget. And I was looking, I would be more apt to agree with the boat if you cut your costs, your operating costs.
Well, that would mean cutting patrols. So let's talk about that for a
Well,
second.
what are your patrols now? You only patrol on the weekend, correct?
No, on occasional days during the week. So if we cut our patrols, what we're doing is we're saying to the Marine community, we don't value you as much. Because they don't get policed 24/7. We have emergency response capability 24/7. But their area of town, the pieces that they pay taxes on, and let's face it, some of our marine owners, sorry Scott not to say this, are in the top 10 taxpayers of the town. So they're entitled to services. When Detective Sergeant Heine spoke about the damage that occurs to vessels by other vessels in the river creating wakes, that's serious stuff. You don't get it unless you have a boat and it's been damaged, or you own a marina and you got people calling you complaining that the boats in the slip were just damaged. We have to police that. It's no different than you living on a side street and saying, every day they run the stop sign. So it's the same type of mission in a different environment, and I need equipment to be able to satisfy that policing mission.
Yeah, but do you need that equipment?
I do in order to get this grant. Or,
That's the catch-22.
here's the bigger catch-22, and I'm going to be very honest with you, as I always am. If we choose not to accept these federal funds, it's going to put at risk all future federal grants that we apply for. So very soon, the fire department is going to apply for a federal grant to replace all their SCBA. Is that next year or the year after? Okay. We got that initially. When you refuse federal dollars, especially after they've been already awarded, and the congressmen are from Connecticut and senators are saying, look at what we brought back to Connecticut.
Keep the politics out of this.
We are, but it's also reality, Barry. Because small town politics and real life getting money back to Old Saybrook are 2 different things. I pay federal taxes just like you. I'd rather see my federal taxes come back to my hometown than go anywhere else in the country. Very selfish.
I'd rather see them not spent, but
Well, they're going to be spent. So if they're going to be spent, I'd rather them be spent on us. So I think it's important to return federal tax dollars back to Old Saybrook. In order to do that, we had to meet the requirements of the grant. We did so. The grant's been awarded. Our town process is this: Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, town meeting. The Board of Selectmen, 2 people on the board at that meeting, unanimously passed this. It's now in the hands of you. I'm hoping that you will pass it back to the Board of Selectmen so we can get slated for a future town meeting where all can come. Friends and foes of the police department, who we equally enjoy serving every single day, can come speak their mind and vote. So I need you to take me to the next step. Take me to the town meeting.
Yeah, floor.
Amen.
Thank you. So first of all, we, as first selectmen in this position, we get handed what we get handed. And in 1999, Mike Pace was handed a lot of dilapidated infrastructure in this town. And he built Town Hall, by the way, John. It was not under this administration that Town Hall was built. It was, well, you mentioned that.
No, it was the town, not one administration.
And I was handed, well, that's what you said. And I was handed a police station where we were renting and paying $166,000 in rent. I didn't like it, John, and maybe you don't like it. So we had to make a move. And the reason, I will submit, a police station did not get built in the last 5 years while we were trying is you can't build one for 5 to 7 million folks. And that's why it costs what it costs. $6 million to build this building, it's office space. Guess what a police station is? It is an office space. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into it. So it's an expensive building. So the chief is right that we eliminated Marine Capital when he put it on the table. I don't know that it got to this board.
I don't remember.
Yeah, right.
It did with one public hearing. Brad tossed it out.
So, but I will openly say that there's been a lot of capital requests over the last few years that have come to the Board of Selectmen, and Steve Gernhardt is in the room right now, one of the other members of the Board of Selectmen. The other member is over at the Board of Ed meetings. But we've had a lot of capital requests in the last few years. But for the last 4 fiscal cycles, we have contributed $75,000 a year, increased capital savings account by $75,000 to the point today where we have $500,000 in a capital savings account. About? Well, you gave me the number. What was it?
470.
470. Okay. So it's nearly $500,000 in a capital non-recurrent account. And I have denied most capital requests over the last 2 years that everybody's put forward. I said, guess what? If you want that, or if it gets to the Board of Finance, or if you get that grant and there's a matching grant, we will go to the Board of Finance and we will use the money we are saving for capital non-recurring items. And if this board were to put it forward to a town meeting, that's what I suggest we do and where we get the money from. We did not budget for a police boat that we didn't know how much it was going to cost or whether we were going to get a grant. Why build that into the mill rate? Just like you don't build grant money into the mill rate. You save for it in a capital account. And by the way, there was a prior administration that frequently used the savings account, the undesignated fund balance or surplus funds of the town at the end of the fiscal year. We haven't done that. We've chosen a little bit of a different path. We've increased our undesignated fund balance to over 8%, and we've saved for capital needs. And that's where I would suggest this money come from. So we have a police boat. Steve and I asked a ton of questions at our meeting. I too don't want this division to grow. And that was one of my questions. But it would appear to us that we're throwing good money after bad if we are going to continue to have this service. If we're going to continue to have Marine Patrol, right now we're throwing good money after bad. We spent $15,000 on engine, about 15, a couple years ago. I mean, $15,000 is 20% of the way to what we're going to be paying for this boat. So, it was bad timing. There's a lot going on with the police right now. But as long as we are going to police the waters of the Connecticut River and Long Island Sound, this seems to me like a pretty good use of town capital funds that we have been saving for the last 4 years. And that's what I would say about this.
I think the one thing that bothers me with them is, it's a grant, nothing comes free. Grants always have something else to go with them. Every time I've seen a grant come, we get one and then we have another one. And I see this as a grant that's gonna grow and grow. If you've got all that capability, you don't think you're gonna have that boat out more times? Absolutely. It's gonna be out more times, there's gonna be more people on it. And it's gonna be out more months, because you've got this, if you were coming for a boat comparable to the one they have now, or a little bit bigger than that one, without all this other stuff, maybe we'd look at it. But this seems like an overkill to me. It seems like I'm taking the Coast Guard's responsibility, the state police's responsibility, and putting them on Old Saybrook. That's what it feels like to me. Now, I appreciate the presentation you guys gave, because you did a good job with the presentation, but that's how I feel. And that's how a lot of other people in this town feel. Go ahead.
The Coast Guard has no authority to enforce state law. So those boats that are speeding in front of, I'm gonna use between the bridges, causing a wake, they cannot stop them and write them a ticket for wake violation, because that's a state law.
But you don't need that type of boat to stop wake violations.
So let me answer some of your comments. So Barry, look, you got the right to feel however you feel.
Well,
And I
I'm
appreciate your passion, and I appreciate your comments. Look, here are the facts. So the state police, the Coast Guard, we can come up with any great thing to say at a meeting. The bottom line is, it's our responsibility. It's always been our responsibility, will continue to be our responsibility. We can't go and get any boat that would serve any mission for 90 grand. We just can't. Is this boat equipped more than if we were using just taxpayer money to go out and buy a boat and equip a boat? Yes. But to do so, we met a federal grant that we're getting a almost $400,000 boat for $90,000. It is a good deal. Because we're getting a new vessel, we're not going to automatically increase patrols. The 2 people on the boat that have to be on the boat aren't automatically going to grow to 4. That's not what this is about. Think of it as a police car. I have a police car. It has 150,000 miles on it, and it's in the garage more than it's on the road. I need to replace it. I have a boat that's 21 years old, that's decaying, the rebuilt engines are dying, and we're being towed in. We're not satisfying our mission. I need to replace it. Instead of the taxpayers paying 100% for replacement, they're paying 25% of it. That's what this kind of comes down with. I know you don't disagree with our policing mission on the water. You just can't, being a town resident for that long. People call because they're sinking, or they have a medical emergency, or they're fighting on their boat. We go. It's just what we have to do. The firemen don't go to domestics or BUI arrest. They just don't. The DEP doesn't staff all the boats that they're sitting there. Go and watch them for a week at a time. They don't move because they don't have the staff. And the 40-foot Coast Guard cutter isn't on patrol in Old Saybrook. It's not that way. In fact, those agencies call us all the time. And if we say we can't go, then you know what happens on the water, Barry? No one goes. Just no one goes. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and I'm not saying it to scare people or using fear tactics. That's the truth. If there's a law enforcement incident going on and there's no law enforcement boats, there's no service. That's not good. That's not health, safety, and welfare. And I can't do what I'm required to do by state statute and properly police the town. I don't expect everyone in town to agree with my philosophies. In fact, I welcome comments. Oddly, tonight, about 5 minutes ago, 5 years ago, I was sworn in as your chief. 5 years. Time flies. In 5 years, we've gone through 2 major hurricanes, a major snowstorm, losing a facility, creating another facility, rebuilding infrastructure. I've signed grants totaling more than $3 million for the town of Old Saybrook. And I gotta be honest with you, at some point, and I don't know when that is, but at some point when I come before these boards, some of those things need to mean something. I am your police chief. State statute protects me. I ain't going anywhere anytime soon. Part of our policing mission is Marine Patrol. We need a new asset. We only have to pay 25% for one. That's what's in front of you. I'm asking you not to approve the purchase. Approve it to the point that it goes to town meeting. So our town meeting form of government can debate the issue robustly and then take a vote. That's all we're asking.
I had some more questions.
Go right ahead.
We've had several major fundings come before the Board of Finance in the last couple of years, and there's been some major issues with those, and I've asked on several occasions about clerks of the works, about these major functions that are going on. That's why I asked tonight, who's gonna follow this boat? Is it gonna be built on time? Is it gonna be within budget, and will it be delivered when you ask it to be? Where's the contract, and who reviews the contract?
Perfect, great question. So first of all, we don't have a contract, because we haven't gone out to bid yet. So we haven't picked the person who's going to build the boat. So once it gets approved at town meeting, we will go out to bid. We have a rigorous bid review process, and we'll do that. I will submit to this, Sarge. While there has been some town projects that have been funded and have gone on or have some issues, I'd like you to name one that I've been in charge of that has had one. The answer is there hasn't been. So my record has to mean something to the board. So when I tell you that I believe that I have the talent and the skill to see the project through, and my personnel have those talents and skill to see the project through, you trust me. When the fire department spends $1 million on a new truck or $500,000 on a new truck, and their volunteers, their truck committee follows it through, no clerk of the works, comes out seamless. So the departments that have a true record of running multi-million-dollar projects, $2.8 million communication system, no issue. $400,000 mini golf, no issue. Very soon, hopefully in 4 weeks, I'm presenting the letter to Lisa and Bob, all of our seawalls, 75% funded, even the stuff that wasn't supposed to be funded. I haven't told you that yet, but we're looking very good. So when I run these projects, we don't have an issue. I can't speak to the other stuff, and I don't want to speak poorly about anyone else that's been handed the responsibility to run a project, but I assure you that we will do all the proper due diligence to make sure that the boat comes in proper and on time.
I guess your integrity wasn't in question.
It's not.
I was asking that. You know, we've spent almost $500,000 on a fireboat. This is a small town, we have 10,000 people. You have a patrol boat, and now we're going to something bigger than a fireboat, with more capabilities. It sounds like you're U.S. Navy with all the stuff on it. And it bothers me that it's that big and that cumbersome.
Okay, and I understand that, but listen, Barry, when you say stuff like it sounds like the U.S. Navy, it's not, right? So when I first talked to Carl about this boat, he was worried because he had heard it was a 40-foot boat, right? I'm like, holy crap, no, I'm not starting Spira's Navy, was my comment to him. It's not going to be a 40. This is the boat we need. The fireboat has a specific mission. The police department has a specific mission. Sometimes both vessels respond to the same emergency. Dave's in the fire department, he can attest to that. Jay Rankins, Master Sergeant in the police department, and also the deputy fire chief, he can attest to that. Gene partners with the fireboats from Marine Search. When we go out and do a search for an overdue vessel or a person in the water that hasn't surfaced yet, it takes 10, 12 boats sometimes by the time it gets going 3 or 4 hours later. And everyone's assigned specific patterns, it all gets gridded off. Coast Guard sometimes not even involved, just watching us on their radar because they don't have assets to send. This is real life, this is what we do. I need to be able to have the tools to police the water. I appreciate you saying my integrity is not under attack here, and I understand that. But this board, and I've had conversations with all of you, most likely during budget season, although I come to every one of your meetings because I feel it's my responsibility to, having the largest municipal budget in town. I feel it's my responsibility to be in front of you so you can ask me questions whenever. I'm passionate about what we do. I am, and that's good. You don't want a department head that you never see. If you just saw 2 sergeants tonight, no police chief, I'd say you have a problem. It's not the way it is in my administration, nor will it ever be. I have passion for what we do. I explain the needs. I make the case. The issue in front of you tonight is, can we go to town meeting and talk to the citizens? That's what tonight's about.
One other question.
Go ahead.
2 other questions.
I was hoping we'd let Dave go, but go ahead.
Number of years of operation expected of the future usability of the new boat?
20.
20? And what's the process for disposing of the boat? That's
Disposing
no
the boat.
longer being used.
Good.
Because we got that under a federal program, I have a question for them to answer that question for me. We just haven't heard back from them. I have a feeling they're not gonna have, based on past history, I have a feeling they're not gonna put any conditions on us.
So because it's a federal asset now, we have to call the federal government and say, We're disposing of the asset. Do you want it back, or can we keep it? If we can keep it, is there an opportunity to auction it, to do whatever? We'll certainly talk to the finance director and the first selectman. If we can get any money out of the old boat to put in or against the 90,000 we need, look, we'll do whatever we can.
We don't want the old.
Yeah, we're not getting a second boat. We're not putting Sam Barnes back in the cove at night. This boat is going away. We want nothing at all to do with this boat. It's bad.
All right, so I have a question.
Yes,
To
sir.
expand on what Chairman Finch said earlier, and I would invite Mr. Massey or Mr. Westerson to chime in. The existing boat is 23 feet. The new proposal is 28 feet. If I were to go up to the boat show in February and
That's a
look
free
for
ride.
a 26 or 24-foot center console with no electronics, no IED detection, none of that stuff, just a boat and a motor on a trailer, what would that cost?
Boat, twin engine, and a trailer.
Yeah.
125, minimum,
Okay.
minimum.
With
You've
no
got
electronics.
You've got no
And then-
equipment on.
And then if I had to outfit it with just standard, Dave LeMay electronics,
$1.50.
Why?
Easy.
go ahead.
As part of the committee, can I just chime in and offer a couple of comments on your question as well as Barry's concern? In my professional capacity, I am fortunate to be able to provide marine services to a number of emergency service departments, from the Navy, Coast Guard, State Police, DEP on down. I participate in a lot of these meetings in various towns, so I understand the emotion that gets attached to boating. What I struggle with, though, is the involvement of the decision makers who may own boats personally, who all of a sudden become experts in boating, especially emergency marine patrol boating. I would offer that the fire department, Chief Rankin, and the members of the fire department would have something to say if I showed up at the fire department and told them how to fight a fire and how to operate the fire trucks just because I own a fire truck. I will tell you, in my capacity at the marina, having had to call 911 and the police department for a fire and emergency with a boat fully involved at the end of my dock, 300 feet from shore, having had to call 911 and the police department for a Moran tug in a 600-foot barge that plows into the Connecticut River Bridge, the railroad bridge, having had to call the police department for a boating accident which when the police arrived on scene found carnage and body parts in the river, I will tell you that the boat is not big enough. They expect out a boat that meets their specific needs. It is not a recreational boat. This is a professional boat operated by professional crews that is going to be maintained by highly trained professionals. It meets a specific police need and has no bearing on anything recreational. That boat is not maintained recreationally. It is kept to a different standard. Every time they get on board the boat, despite what they say being towed in, they can turn the key and go. Number one, because I make sure of it, but number two, I'm always afraid that it's me they're gonna come get someday, or it's gonna be Barry, or it's gonna be John. It's not a recreational boat, and a comparison to a recreational boat, I think is inappropriate.
My only point was comparing the price of
But even comparing
an insufficient boat with,
But you can walk over to Boats Incorporated and buy a 28-foot Parker with twin outboards with nothing for that, that's gonna be $300,000.
that's my point.
To follow up on my first comment earlier in the evening, if you notice the boats that were presented that our surrounding towns have purchased, to do basically, I'm going to say the same thing, within a smaller geographical area than Old Saybrook enjoys. You're looking at 40-foot boats, you're looking at 38-foot boats, 32-foot boats, 35-foot boats, and the dollar signs were commensurately higher than the stuff that we've talked about. This is a boat, as I said, this is not a boat that we want. This is a boat that we need, and it was spec'd out to meet a certain design to fit the projects that Old Saybrook is faced with. 28 feet. It's not bigger than the fireboat. It's dramatically smaller than the fireboat. It probably weighs half as much as the fireboat, but that's because it's got a different mission.
Thank you.
One question I have is, it says in this directive that you gave us, a broader range of regional response coverage and capability. What I'm concerned about, if we own this boat, are we going to be going to surrounding towns and providing these services? and we have to do it because we got this grant? And if so, can we get monies back from these towns when we're providing them services?
Sure, great question. So, providing services to other communities on the waterway has absolutely positively nothing to do with the grant. So today, we do that. Why do we do that? The state of Connecticut has an opt-out law enforcement emergency mutual aid compact, which means when another department calls another department for help, you go. If the town of Old Saybrook wants to be, and it would be, the only community in the state of Connecticut to say that we're not going to help other communities in their public safety missions, that's something that I'd have to sign off on it, which I'm not going to do. The Board of Selectmen have to sign off of it, and in our form of government, the Police Commission would have to sign off on it. That's just not gonna happen. So today, we go to other towns, and today, other towns come to us. Just like I talked about that marine search. We need their help just as much as they need ours. Oftentimes, when we get a notification of an emergency, there's not real clear road signs on the water or clear town lines. So what could be in Westbrook winds up in Saybrook, or what started in Saybrook floats into Westbrook and vice versa. We all go and figure it out, and whichever jurisdiction has to investigate, investigates. But usually our first mission and our priority mission that everyone knows here on the board is the preservation of life. And you can't get to someone fast enough who needs life-saving skills, whether that barely is in Westbrook or barely in Old Lyme, we're gonna do that. Secondly, let me just finish. Secondly, when we participate in other events, civic events with our boat, it's actually professional development for us, because the areas are assigned just like a grid search. So without adding money to our budget, we're participating in professional development that helps us during actual emergencies, which is necessary. Good.
I guess the way I look at it is our townspeople, we have all the best items. We have the best fire boat in the area as far as I can see. Sounds like we're gonna have the best police boat. We have a lot of the best fire equipment. And it just seems like it's their turn to share the wealth, or we should be...
Here's what I enjoy, Brad. I enjoy being the best town. And in order to be the best town, we have to be the best at everything, whether it's education, public safety, local government. We have to excel. So I'm going to tell you that when we win awards like the top 100 communities for kids, we look at our Youth and Family Services Bureau and say, great job. When we have award-winning libraries, we say, great job. We have nationally recognized dispatchers. We have nationally recognized police and fire. That's good. We want that. If I moved to a different community when I retire and they don't have the best of the best, what attracts me to go there? So yes, will we have one of the best police boats in the area? Yeah. You know when? Until someone else gets another new one. That's the way that works. So this boat that we're asking you again to send to town meeting for the public to discuss and vote on, $90,000 for almost $400,000, good deal, something we need.
Bob mentioned something before. This hasn't been through the police commission yet, has it?
So,
And they haven't approved it, and I'm wondering why it got from here to here without going through the police commission first.
because the police commission does not approve grants. That's my job as the police chief. It's an operational item. So that authority is delegated to me by nature of my position. So I'm responsible for grant writing in the police department. That's been delegated. We followed the process. We do several grants throughout the year that all don't flow through the police commission. And the police commission, while statutorily they have oversight over the entire police mission, there are two things, and as you know, they're separate budget items, marine patrol and animal control, that the police commission doesn't have direct executive oversight on. By state statute, animal control I do, and marine patrol by the history of the town and the nature of the work, that's my responsibility.
Mr. Massey, I want to ask you a question. In your professional judgment, if we get the release of the boat, could you put a value of what we could possibly get for that boat if we were to sell it or auction it?
I'm not in the business of selling boats. I will tell you that for a number of different emergency marine patrols and departments that we have offered repowering services, we have been able to generate a fair amount of money for used equipment through a variety of sources, whether it be eBay, Craigslist, or local. The boat, if the town was successful in acquiring a replacement for this asset, my sense is the value of the existing boat would be substantial, greater than $5,000.
And we would look to dispose of that in accordance with our policies, our capital asset disposal policies. So, we can't just put the boat on Craigslist. That's got to be something that's approved.
And you can't put out the possibility that the feds might want the proceeds from the disposal since it was their asset. And that happens
Good point.
quite frequently.
Yeah,
So-
very good point.
I just, a quick comment to what Barry said. Usually we have 10,000 residents. In the summer, we don't. We have more than that. Boats, think of an island in the Caribbean. A boat from that island comes into our river every year. I've stopped and arrested people from Scotland and England that bring their boats over from the Atlantic. When you sit underneath the Baldwin Bridge someday, you're gonna see boats not only from Connecticut, from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, pick a New England state, they come here. So we're just not dealing with little tiny boats that are registered on Saybrook. We're dealing with international boats coming over here.
You're doing that today with the boat you have that you tell me is substandard.
No,
See, the
Barry, it's
substandard
broken.
boat is $5,000, we're going to 361, I go, you gotta be out of your mind.
Yeah, but we're getting 90-year-old, it's only gonna cost the town
It's gonna
$90,000.
cost me $250 my federal taxes.
The money's already allotted.
It's allotted, it's been approved. So if they have your money already, the question is, where does it go?
With the training of this chemical warfare, et cetera, is that going to be at the town's expense?
It's
or
part of the grant.
It's part of the grant.
Yeah, so don't get hung up on that stuff.
I just wanna know the-
No, I'm just saying generally, look, it's a thing, right? It's what we do now. So since 9/11, law enforcement is involved in that type of stuff. We have chemical suits, we do training for that. We're doing this whole Ebola thing now. We did H1N1. We've had threats against our bridges that we've responded to. It's just part of the job now, unfortunately, but it is, folks. It really, really is. Whether you believe it or not.
How long is the window on a grant?
It's a completion in 2 years from the time of award, so it's been awarded already. So we're in our active window. And we expect, what's your timeline to have it built once we say to someone, build it?
What was that time?
6 to 10 months?
Yeah,
6 to 10.
Should be summer, midsummer if we give the go-ahead in the next 2 months.
Any other questions?
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Is there a motion to approve an appropriation to move to the town meeting to be voted on at town meeting in the amount of $361,570 for the port security grant? Is there a second? I will second. Is there any further discussion?
I would, I'll say one thing. I would strongly encourage this board to move this to town meeting. I think it's your job to hear what the discussion at the town meeting will be with regard to this grant. Maintaining the current vote as it is throwing good money after bad, and this was a job well done. If this were a new program, I would be a lot more suspicious of it, but we've been doing it, and we will continue to do it, and we'll continue to do it hopefully with this vote, so.
Any other discussion?
I'd just like to say that, no, I don't like to spend $90,000 of town money. I'd like to save it or use it for social services or education. But for $90,000 to get a $361,000 vote, and the chance of losing, I guess, future grants seems mindless to me. It's a no-brainer.
It's called leveraging town assets.
How do you jeopardize future grants? How does that jeopardize future grants?
Chief?
So look, I don't work for the federal government. I work with the federal government, and there's a lot that goes into applying successfully for federal grants.
I'm sure you went through a lot of work.
I'm answering your question, Barry. When you go through all that work, it's not just work on the local end. So it's work all the way up the chain, if you will. When the federal government chooses to give a community federal dollars, that's celebrated at the federal and state level. When you then say after you applied, no, we're not interested, I'm sure that has a negative impact. A lot of the grants that we apply for are under the auspice of Homeland Security. All of our FEMA recovery grants, all of our FEMA Fire Act grants, and the FEMA Port Security Grant. In fact, it's all channeled through the same office. I would imagine if I worked in that office and I worked hard to get a local community some dollars, and then they said no, I don't know how hard I'd work 6 months to a year later for them. So everyone in town knew for 2 years I was applying for this grant. And it did. We were in the middle school. It stayed. It actually passed the Board of Selectmen. It was in the budget. Brad stood up, long tables, middle school auditorium, and said, I tell you what, this is public forum after one of the public hearings. I tell you what, let me cut that money out of your Marine budget, and if you get that grant, you come back and see us. And I said, stood up, front row, where everyone whispers, right, at the end of those meetings. I said, deal. I was hoping in 3 months with the first application, I was going to come back and go, bam, look at that, Mr. Thorpe. Didn't happen. Happened later than that. I'm here tonight to say, bam, look at that, Mr. Thorpe. You did it. I don't know.
I would just, my opinion on this is that until people stop using the water or Long Island Sound and the Connecticut River dry up, there's going to be a police boat. If we don't use this grant to get it, eventually we're going to wind up putting it in the budget. It's going to be a big capital expense. There's going to be a boat. If it's a much smaller boat with less equipment on it, it's going to be more money than the $90,000 that this would come. It's not as if the $90,000 is going to increase anyone's taxes. It's already been saved for. That's my opinion.
Carl, you're saying that the $90,000 is already existing and we have it already.
What I'm saying is this board for the last 4 budget cycles has each year put away money. And that money is in a capital non-recurring account that must go from Board of Selectmen to Board of Finance and be authorized at town meeting. And we haven't touched that account except for the Cornfield Point seawalls, which thank God we had that money. Thank God this board had the foresight to budget like that because we were able to put in what we're going to hope is the town's 25%, another, that was a FEMA grant, towards $600,000 worth of seawalls that we didn't expect. In fact,
Recreational area.
What?
Recreational area.
Yeah, recreational. If the chief is successful in getting some of these monies back from the Cornfield Point recreational areas, we may in fact have a few more dollars in that account if that's where we choose to put them back to from where they were appropriated. So we have a savings account
So
for
you're telling me
capital
that-
items.
You're
And
telling
we-
me that the taxpayers will not have to pay another cent on this assessment or in the next
The
year because we
taxpayers,
already have the money
yep,
aside?
yep, the taxpayers have chosen to put money aside over the last 4 years for capital needs. And I would suggest, and there's more than $90,000 for capital needs. And I would submit to you that's where the
Don't let
money.
them hear that.
Well,
I guess the other factor, the 90,000 doesn't go until they finish the boat, is that correct?
until what, Brett?
Till they finish the boat. You don't come with the 90,000 till the boat's ready, which is 2 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, if it's appropriated, if it's.
No?
Hold
I
on.
see you shaking your head.
If it's appropriated at town meetings, I don't know what the contract says in terms of, I don't know how the boat builder will want the money.
So, I mean, think about the fire truck, right? When that came back from bid, so much is due at the time of waters, midpoint, end of the thing. We haven't negotiated those terms because we haven't picked a vendor yet. So, again, Barry, I understand that you say this a lot, and I respect this. If the $90,000 goes into a capital budget, then that goes as part of the taxpayer's mill rate. To Sergeant Stevenson's point, the taxpayers, as Carl eloquently said, have chosen over the last 4 years to put money into the savings account. They've been taxed on that already. Let's use that money for this one-time capital non-recurring issue as opposed to re-tax them on $90,000 as part of the mill rate.
The last time you did a grant, you applied for a grant, what was the price of the boat with all this extra stuff on it?
So last time that we applied for the grant, we didn't meet all the requirements. We thought we were gonna skate around some of that Seaburn equipment, so it was less. Do you remember the dollar amount? It was $30,000 less, and that didn't meet the guidelines.
When do you have to fork up the $361,000? In this fiscal year or next fiscal year?
So it depends on the bid process. So as you know, we have to go to town meeting. When we receive a grant, we have to approve the entire amount, even the amount that we're getting for free. It's how our charter is written. So again, based on the schedule of the building of the boat, will depend on what money needs to come when. But you know, the feds aren't going to send us the money. We're going to expend it. It's a reimbursable grant. We're going to spend the money and receive reimbursement. Yes, I'm hoping so.
So Carl, my question to you is, you have grant money that has to come for the Main Street Park. You got $155,000 for the ground plan. You've got $90,000 that you have to pay an engineer for the.
That would be in the operating budget, though, not in.
You don't have it in the operating budget. The $90,000. It's over and above what's in the operating budget. You also have an issue with.
Not if it's over 2 years, John. Not if it's appropriated over 2 years.
I'll have to check that. You also might have some issues with the police department, with a lease. We don't know what's going to happen there. You also have another issue with moving expenses that are not in the budget. So where's all this money going to come from?
You're a little off topic here, but hold on.
No, we're talking about money.
I understand that. So listen,
From.
I'll answer your question, John, if you want to go on to a whole bunch of different budget issues. Right now, we're paying $166,000 a year in rent. Quite frankly, I suppose if the property owner at the PD said, hey, restore it to normal, and it costs us 30 or 40 grand, I could reduce that appropriation that is currently a fixed item in the budget, by the way. That's in the operating budget.
That's right.
So we could say, hey, we're not going to take that 166 off the books, like I would assume it would come off the books July 1, 2015, for the 15-16 year. And maybe we take 80,000 off the books.
But the lease ends June 30th. You have to pay it by the end of the year, this fiscal year, not next fiscal year.
But we don't. Okay. So your question, I answered you in a hypothetical, and your question is a hypothetical. So why don't we cross that bridge? Because I'll probably be here talking to you if that's the case. I also have a contingency account. We have other
$20,000.
Yeah, you're right, John. It's $20,000. I don't know what to tell you. You know, if I don't know, I have no idea, nor do you, what it might cost to restore that building, or if they're going to ask us to restore that building. So why are we talking about it?
Because it's a contingency in this fiscal year. That's why I asked the question.
It's a potential cost
right,
that hasn't been identified yet. And with regard to the engineering at the head of Main Street, I was very upfront with you guys that there was going to be additional engineering fees. That's called in my opinion, you're leveraging, you're getting $1 million grant. Do we want to, look, do we want to accept $1 million to redo North Main Street? That's going to be a town decision whether they want to spend that money. And I'm going to tell, at that November 24th meeting, I will tell everybody that there is additional cost to this grant. I suspect that the engineering, John, will start it in this fiscal year, and it will continue through the 15-16 fiscal year. So I will be able to, in next year's budget, fund it in the operating budget under the engineering for the additional fees. So I've already had a conversation with Jeff Jacobson, our engineer, and I said, Jeff, I don't have the money. So I may have you do a certain amount of work this year until we expend all the monies in this year's engineering budget and have to put it in the operating budget next year for your design on North Main Street. So that 90, 80, 90,000 could be 40 this year, 30 this year, 60 next year. And you'll see it reflected in the operating budget under the engineering line item. So.
Lisa, what did you say about the money if the boat got sold for, say, $5,000?
In things that I've been involved with in the past, where they are a state or a federal asset, sometimes it's restricted that if you make proceeds on it from a sale, if it's no longer to be in service, that they wish the proceeds as it was originally their asset. They spent the money on it originally. I don't know if that's the case here. Might not be, because they might have declared it surplus property and that's it. But it's certainly a possibility that sometimes proceeds have to go back to the
I don't think
original.
that'll happen because it was declared surplus property, it was signed over and turned over to us.
Right.
There is certain equipment we have that I have to check with them on before we dispose of it. Some of it they take back. I've never seen where it's a boat they take back or take any of the proceeds, but I just wanna get a recent ruling on that. I don't think they're gonna want it, they've got more stuff than they know what to do with anyway.
So the grant is not contingent on what we do with the old boat. My promise to you as police chief is we're not going to keep it and expand the Marine Patrol. So the purpose of tonight's discussion again is hopefully to pass this issue to town meeting so the residents of the town and our form of government can vote. I gotta say, doing something good really shouldn't be this hard, folks.
Any other discussion?
Just one, Carl, when you obligate that $300,000, because it's, in the grant, we've already got, when we go to get bonding, bonding for the reserve, where do we sit with that money? Because we were concerned
Grant
about that.
monies, we have letters saying this is a
Oh, okay, you didn't tell me that. You were,
Well, I'm answering your question, so I didn't have an opportunity to tell you, but we get letters. We get letters from, for instance, on the $1 Million North Main Street grant. We get a commitment to fund. So Bob can basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, if we spend $1 million of our own money and we have a commitment to fund, you can book that and say, hey, we're gonna get this money back. Nobody has to worry about that.
Yeah, once you have a letter written from the
So-
agency, then you can
okay.
put it in as a
That's what we're talking about. We didn't
receivable.
have that at the last meeting, that's why I asked the question.
You didn't have that.
The letter last meeting.
Well, we've had, I wouldn't have come to you for a grant if we didn't have a letter.
And also just, you know,
The chief said.
we have a commitment to fund letter.
That's what.
Yeah,
Just so you know.
The last time.
So this immediately, when it passes at town meeting, because I firmly believe as a town resident and as your police chief and emergency management director, that the citizens of the town will see this as a, I think you said, no-brainer. I think it will be very, very successful at town meeting. I think we'll listen to a few people and then we'll vote and it will pass. Because the residents of the town of Old Saybrook support the Department of Police Services. They always have, and I hope they always will, and we hope to always live up to their expectation. We have the commitment letter. Once that passes at town meeting, I'll hand that off to Bob. He does whatever he does it in the treasury world. Last meeting, we talked about the seawall grant. We talked about the auditors and Lisa's report and Bob's report. And we talked about how we didn't have that commitment letter from FEMA, so we couldn't book that this year. But that next year, we're gonna see a higher amount booked because we spent it in one fiscal year and received it. No different than Hurricane Irene. Sandy, we got in the same year. We got Irene in the same year as Sandy, and they had to book that receivable in the same year. So we do this all the time. It's the business that they do, that Lisa and Bob do. It's normal accounting practices, and it'll be no different with this federal grant. But again, we do have the commitment to fund letter, so Bob and Lisa can do what they do with it in their domain.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions?
How'd you vote?
Yes.
Motion
What was the vote?
pass.
3-3.
3-3.
Okay, so, here's what I need to say, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind
Go ahead.
giving me a little latitude. So, the three people that just said no, I just want you to know that obviously the conversation's not over. We will work with our legal counsel to find out what our recourse is, such as petitioning for town meeting. The no vote tonight puts the town in jeopardy and puts the public safety services of the town of Old Saybrook in jeopardy of satisfying its mission. And whether it's out of order or not, three of you, and I know you all personally, should be absolutely ashamed of yourselves on voting the way you did.
Item number 8.
Okay. This is the grant you heard about last time that I spoke with you. This would also go to town meeting. We do have a commitment to fund fund this. This is for strictly to hire a licensed environmental professional to do a site assessment on 20 acres. I have no plans for that 20 acres. It's not our property. It is simply, this has been property that has been underperforming for 25 years. We all know the building. We all know the property. Underperforming. This is a grant, and by the way, John, to just address one of your other part of that question. The STEEP grant and this grant, there are no other costs associated. The STEEP grant allows engineering and design. So we should not incur any additional costs, as does this one. This money is, actually there's a contingency in this. It's actually $135 for site assessment, $10,000 for incidental, $7,500 for contingency. That's just the way they write the grant. The money's for a licensed environmental professional. And we're getting some RFPs. We're gonna put a couple RFPs out to a state contractor list of LEPs. They've already vetted these people. We will select a few and we will interview a few, and hopefully they will be able to get underway. And that's it. That's all this grant is. We're one of 9 communities in the state to get a site assessment grant for Brownfield. So quite frankly, echoing what the chief said, we should be, I mean, quite frankly, I kind of, when we've gotten $2 million, over $2 million worth of grants in 3 years. We started off with a $400,000, 400 or so over at senior housing. I forget how much it was. It was a $400,000 community block grant. North Main Street, $1 million. STEEP grant, $500,000. This is $155,000. We got a historic resources grant for $30,000. We've done really well, and quite frankly, I think Officer Walsh and DePerry did very well too in getting grant funds coming back to the town of Old Saybrook. These are state funds. This is state bond money. And again, it was going to go to someone. We've never gotten one before. I mean, I think it's a real great thing that we were able to do this. My sole purpose in applying for this grant is to try to revitalize a certain section of town that is underperforming and can throw off more tax dollars than it is throwing off now. People complain about residential property taxes, that the commercial sector is not large enough in this town. I don't know what potentially would go there, but my idea is to increase the commercial tax base to take more of a burden off the residential property taxes in this town. That was my thinking in applying for this grant that we have received, so I would ask for your support on it. I've sent you all the materials on it, everybody, right?
Yep.
So it's DECD, it's the Department of Economic and Community Development. That's the grant, that's who it's from.
Any questions for Carl? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Item number 9, Selectors Report.
I don't have much. I'll just tell you that as part of belonging to CCM, we used to not get labor reports, like the latest negotiated and arbitrated settlements. Did I go over this last time?
I don't think so, but it was a separate service provided
Yeah,
at
it
a
was a
charge
separate service
by
at a charge.
CCM.
They've now released that to all the municipalities. And I just wanted to tell you that negotiated settlements for fiscal year 15, 16, and 17 were 2.3 on average, 2.3, 2.37, and 2.25. We are at 2.2 and 2.25. Those were our negotiated settlements so far. In addition to that, you will see savings this year from what we negotiated with health insurance, and it'll be more than 5 figures, I believe, but I'm not, no promises, but there will be savings. So we were fair to the employees, but I think we also did well. So I'm not gonna, it's 9 o'clock, so I'm not gonna bore you guys with much more. Okay?
Any questions for Carl? All right, comments, I have no comments. Motion to adjourn?
Hold on.
You
added public comment.
added
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'd like to make
My mistake.
the first
Public comment?
public comment. So, listen, before you adjourn tonight, and before I have to spend tax dollars to try to figure out how we bring this issue to the people who should truly be deciding the issue, the public at town meeting, I would ask, because this is a regular meeting, that you reconsider the motion that was a tie vote. You have a Board of Selectmen that has endorsed the project. Half of you endorse it, the other half of you don't. That clearly tells me, as a town resident, as a taxpayer, that this should go to the public. And we should see what the public has to say. By not allowing this no-brainer grant to go to the public for their input and vote, we're blocking their ability, we're blocking our town's legislative body's ability to make a decision. While they elected you to do what you do in your roles, they didn't elect you to block their voice. What we were asking tonight was not for you to write a check for $90,000. We asked you tonight for the opportunity for this issue to be heard at town meeting. We all know we can petition and hold town meetings and petition the Board of Selectmen. Look, do we need to do that over a police boat? Do I need to contact every marina owner to have them come to your meetings and explain how much they pay in taxes and how important? Do we need to turn this into an issue? Or can we send it to town meeting, let the public come, and let the public decide? If the public votes no, then it's no. My maintenance budget will go up, we'll keep throwing good money at bad, and we'll move on. But if the public says yes, then we listen to the legislative body and we get the federal grant. Brownstone grant, very important. Not as important when someone's sinking and needs, brownfields. Not as important as when someone's sinking and needs help. It's just not, folks. So we prioritize things all the time. Our mission always is health, safety, and welfare. Safety's right up there, so is health. I'm asking you formally, Mr. Chairman, to reconsider the motion. You can do that at a regular meeting. And all I'm asking is for one of you to change your vote just to allow the people to have a say, not to write the check for $90,000. Let the people of the town of Old Saybrook have their voice. Thank you.
Selectman Gernhardt?
You know, I've been listening for like an hour and 20 minutes, and a lot of good questions. You identified a need. You pretty much said it's a no-brainer. You said as long as there's water, there's going to be a need for the police boat. So I just want you to remember or think about two things. Who here is driving home in a 20-year-old car? Who here depends on a 20-year-old car to get to work? You know, because I've had comments, oh, a 20-year-old boat isn't very old. I don't think anybody in this room depends on a 20-year-old car. And the other thing, there was comments about, well, we've got the best police boat, we've got the best fire boat. Nothing wrong with having the best police boat, nothing wrong with having the best fire boat. I heard comments about, well, we might have to help other communities. Nothing wrong with having to help other communities. I was stuck out there as a kid, 4 hours in the middle of November, 4 miles offshore. Police boat was in for the winter, fire boat was broken down, and it was the Westbrook Fire Department that had to come and rescue me. Not the Saybrook, because we didn't have the best. So I want you to think when you're driving home in your less than 20-year-old car, what if one of your kids or grandkids is out there on a boat and they get stuck? And you're like, gee, I don't think I wanted to spend the $90,000. That's all I want.
Thank you.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Mr. Massey?
My presence here this evening is not solely in a professional capacity assisting the committee, but to act as the voice for the marine community here in Old Saybrook, which is substantial. For those who have voted no, while we respect your opinion, if you have never had the opportunity to dial 911 for a marine emergency, I congratulate you. If you've had to dial 911 for any emergency, there is a patrol staff and a cruiser, there is a fire truck in the firehouse that will respond to your 911 call. What you've heard me say professionally tonight is this boat has reached the end of its useful life and will soon be retired as an asset for the town, which means there will be no boat. So when I have to call 911 for a marine emergency, who's going to come to us? So now, with a no boat, I will certainly have to return to the communities of Fenwick, which is a substantial taxpayer. I'll return to the communities of Knollwood and Fenwood, and I'll return to the communities of Indiantown and tell them that there will no longer be a cruiser in the police station to respond to their marine emergency. My sense is if you were to total up the contribution from those communities to the operating budget of the town, you'd find that it's a substantial contribution that you are refusing to provide an asset for. My sense is if it goes to town committee, if it does go to town committee, that's not the most prudent decision to make in the interest of the taxpayers. So I would support the chief's request to reconsider and try to reconsider this evening.
Thank you.
I'd like,
Yes, sir?
I sat where you guys all sat for probably 10 years. I understand the need to control costs, but I would just like you to think about the fact that this boat is limping, literally, and didn't even limp recently, along, and it's gonna need to be replaced and replaced in the very near future. So we can spend $90,000 and have the best state-of-the-art boat, or very shortly, we'll come back to you and ask you for $200,000 for a boat that will just make it and do a less substantial job. Now, yes, I'm the chairman of the police commission. Different role than I used to play. However, as a taxpayer, if you can replace an asset that you're gonna have to spend a quarter or $250,000 for within the next 2 years with a grant and a $90,000 bill. For those of you who are fiscally conservative, if you don't do that, I would very much question your judgment. I sat up there. I said no to many different things. But this is a no-brainer. I mean, I owned my own business for 30 years. If I could get $10,000 worth of something for $2,500 as a business person, wouldn't you do it, Barry? If you could get tractors at 3/4 off, wouldn't you go and buy tractors?
Depends what the string is on the other end, Bob.
There is no string.
There is
Larry.
no other string.
But what is the string? Identify the string.
So, whatever. I just want you to understand, this issue isn't over, because if we don't get the grant, we don't get the boat, sooner or later that boat's not gonna go at all, and then we're gonna come looking for $250,000 to replace the vessel with a much less substantial vessel that cannot do what this vessel will be allowed to do.
Any additional
Penny wise and pound foolish is the way I look at it.
Public comment?
It is.
Okay. I'd like to make a comment. The argument isn't whether we get a wonderful boat for half nothing, which of course has to be staffed by the town. The argument is, do we need it at all? That, I would argue that we really don't need this boat. And if we did need it, then Deep River, Essex, Lyme, and Old Lyme all should be sharing the cost of it. Because it's patrolling, as everybody says, 9 marinas and all that. Fine, there's a lot of marinas in those other towns too. Why should we?
That's why they have their own boats.
That's why
They have their own boats.
Old Lyme is not running its own boat.
They are.
Look, I'm not arguing with you, I'm trying to make a comment. Okay, you do what you like. The question is, why do we need a police boat at all? We have a fire boat that can react to emergencies. I remember the arguments that came up here a long time ago about the fire department, and they said nothing else would do but this $500,000 boat or whatever it was, and because ordinary boats didn't have enough floor space and they couldn't go out in rough weather and everything. Well, you've got it. Why can't it part-time perform what is deemed necessary by the police force? The radiation equipment and everything he's talking about, you can always put that in a fireboat. But why should
town
we,
expense
what,
then.
why should we have two emergency boats? When basically none of the other people are, they may have boats, but they're not running them. So I'm saying, we have no reason to need this. Now, okay?
Chief?
I'm not going to debate anything he said, because I'm not here to dispel mistruths. I have this one question. Barbara, from what years to what year were you first selectman?
1973 to 1989.
Did we have a Marine Patrol?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. I was born in 1974, so you've had a Marine Patrol since before I was born.
Doesn't answer the question.
No, it does, because there's been a need and there's still a need. And the 9 marinas are marinas in town, and they're taxpayers, and they need to
The
be.
bottom
used.
line is that you have different equipment to handle different things. The fact that we have an ambulance doesn't mean we don't need a fire truck. The fact that we have a fire truck does not mean we don't need a police car. They have, and in this day and age, unfortunately, everything has become so specialized and so advanced and so, involved because of the geopolitical issues of the world that we have no control over. That's the way the world is going. When I was a kid, we had black and white TV. We didn't have cable. We didn't have this or that or the other thing. But we do now. We have text, kids texting now, they don't even know how to talk because they text, they're in the same room and they don't even, you can't live the world 30 years ago. That's all I have to say.
Any additional public comment?
Just real quick, I want to reiterate, I think we've debated the issue enough. I just want to reiterate, a 3-3 vote is clear to me that it deserves additional public debate. I respectfully ask that you reconsider the motion. I respectfully ask that one of you change your mind, I'd like all of you to change your mind. But let's not silence the town taxpayers. Let's go to town meeting, let's see what they have to say, let's give them the voice that they deserve on all issues. You've done it for every other grant. All I'm asking for is that we let the public make a decision. Why would we be afraid of a public forum? I'm not, you shouldn't be. Let whoever wants to show up, vote yes, vote no, abstain, but let's give the people the voice that they deserve.
Any additional public comment?
Can I make a motion to, I don't even know how to
Reconsider the motion.
reconsider the motion 7 for the Department of Police Services Port Security Grant and then $361,570 to go to town meeting.
Is there a second? I will second that. Is there any discussion?
My only concern is,
I'd like to say something. I wasn't really prepared to speak about this just because I didn't think it was going to be such a hot topic. And I appreciated all the comments, yays and nays. I'm one of the first people who doesn't like to spend money. I'm not a voter. I could care less about voting. But I understand living in Old Saybrook, we are in a voting community. And that's a service that we provide to our township. Whether you're visiting, whether you're a resident, whether you're a part-time owner, whatever. It's something that we provide and what puts us on the map. And for us to question whether they need a boat, I'm not a professional. I can't say, you don't need this boat, you can't run on this anymore. I look to professionals. I don't go to the doctor and say, well, no, I don't judge your, take your judgment into consideration. They've asked. They need a boat. And we can get this boat for $90,000 versus going out and them coming back to us and saying, we have $250,000 to buy a subservice boat that we could have had at $90,000 at great service. And I love the fact that we can help other towns. If Old Lyme needs our help, great, we can help them. Because you know what? They're going to turn around, they're going to help us sometime. It's all reciprocated. So I don't want to think of this as we're just a bubble, that we are just concerned that we have the best and everyone's going to utilize our services and oh no, are they going to pay up for this? I don't care as a taxpayer. I don't think we should care. And I've been sitting through some meetings where you guys have also said, I'm just going to vote for this to go to town meeting. The turf, the preserve, all the school stuff. And that's all the chief has asked us, and that's why I'm sort of asking you guys, let the town vote on this.
Any other comments?
No, all your points are valid, and I'm not dispelling that you don't need a vote, or we won't need one later on. My biggest concern is what continually happens, and I see it on the Board of Finance all the time. We get one thing, we need something bigger and better, and it grows. And with the capabilities, we don't need all those capabilities on the goals. We need it because that's the only way we can get the grant, but we don't need those. And when we get those, it puts us in a situation where I will guarantee you, it'll be more hours, more police, more manned, and that's what I worry about, because that's what costs us money, is the continual growth of the departments that have. So if we talk about sustainability, which everybody wants to talk about, we're not sustaining, we're growing. We're growing in capability, we're growing in the size of the boat, and the fact that we won't use it, we're gonna use it.
We just appropriated.
And I worry about that.
For $155,000 to bring more economic development in. And that's gonna add more potentially to the police services. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. We wanna build this community.
Well, they're two different things, don't.
No, it's not, it really isn't.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure before you, if you do consider voting on it, it's a motion to reconsider the vote, and item number 7, and I think it'd be 2 motions, one to reconsider item number 7, and then
Okay.
if that were to pass, it would be another motion.
All right. So the motion on the table is to reconsider
To reconsider.
the vote.
The vote. So,
Yes.
I think the real problem here is, with this board, since I've been on it, is when we have a discussion, I think we should table the vote until the next meeting. I think we're getting a lot of stuff jammed down our throat. And it's just, it comes at us, we don't have time to talk about it, we don't have time to get public opinion. It's just, I think we should talk about it tonight, and I think we should vote on it 2 weeks from now.
I tend to agree with you. However, this is not new news. It's been
It's all
going.
hearsay. I mean, I heard about the 40-foot boat, I was pleased to hear it was 28-foot.
Okay,
So I'm hearing nothing but false
The
statements.
fact that, my recollection, that this has gone on for 3 or 4 years, the boat issue.
But we never knew the specifications
I
that
know.
were presented tonight.
They,
And we need time to digest that
all the specs were sent to us on the weekend.
on Sunday. But it's not as good as what he
So-
told us tonight.
The bottom line is, and you say public opinion, let it go to the public. They can all come to the middle school or wherever it is and express their opinion. All we're doing is voting on moving this to town meeting. That's to give the town the opportunity to vote on it.
Guys, you've heard from more people tonight than 99% of your regular Board of Finance meetings.
I'll be very honest with you. From what I heard on the street about the vote, I would have voted no. But now that I know the truth, I changed my vote.
And I appreciate that, but the truth is all we can deliver. So last Board of Finance meeting, in the selectmen's
That's why I'm
report-
asking for 2 weeks when we do this stuff. Come in, present your case, we'll vote on it at the next meeting.
So, in last meeting, in the selectmen's comments, in the selectmen's report, we talked about the boat grant. We did. So, this is the second meeting, this is the formal presentation. The issue with this, let me just, hear me out again. The issue with this is when you decide to vote, hopefully affirmatively, on both motions, this doesn't mean we get the vote. It has to go to town meeting. So, like the other issues that you brought up, I've sat here, by the way, sometimes the only one sitting in this audience. So the attendance tonight is much, much more significant than it normally is. 90% of this room is here for this one issue. You've heard people speak against it. You've heard people speak for it. Doesn't happen in a lot of your stuff. You guys have approved way more expensive projects with no one sitting in the audience the minute it's brought to the table. So let's just call truth.
And that's what I don't like.
I understand you don't like that. But guess what? Your decision tonight doesn't get us the vote. It forwards it to town meeting. So now, while I'm conflicted over why you don't think we need it, that boggles my mind, because I just don't get that at all, professionally and personally. But what really bothers me personally, really, if I wasn't in the uniform and I was just a taxpayer sitting here, I'd say the same thing, is why are we telling the voters, why are 3 people out of 6 people present telling the entire electorate that they can't have a voice and make a decision on this? Guys, it's just not, it's not good. I hate to use the word politics. It's not good politics. Let people come to a town meeting, let them see a presentation, let them make a decision, and cast a vote. All you're doing right now is causing us to go out and do legwork, to spend tax dollars out of our budget, out of our legal line item, to figure out how we petition for a town meeting. We call a town meeting, you guys sit up front or you don't sit up front or whatever the heck has to happen, and we pack the room. The old Saybrook Fire Department shows up. Every single marina owner comes up. All the members of our neighborhood watch groups from marina areas, Indian Town, Norwood, they all show up. Is that in the best interest of the town of Old Saybrook? If you think it is, keep your vote the way it is. I think you pass it to town meeting and let people have that say. Not everything good should be this tough, and not everything has to be a fight like this, guys. It really doesn't. This is public safety. We need this to do our job.
So there's a motion and a second to reconsider the vote. Is there any further discussion?
What happens if we decide to reconsider, but then make a motion to table,
Suppose we can do that?
so that we get 2 weeks to reconsider what's going on here, and get some additional input, and then have the motion.
What kind of input?
So that would be my question. What kind of input are you looking for?
Citizen input,
That's
That's
for
what
the
the
town
town
meeting.
meeting is for.
before.
That's the town meeting.
All the people that elected us aren't always at the town meetings,
Oh,
and those aren't the people that we network with on a daily basis.
okay, so there's a motion and a second to reconsider the vote. Is there any further discussion?
And what happens if the vote stays the same tonight? Now, is that the end of the issue, or can the issue be brought up again at the next meeting?
It can be brought up.
It can be brought up again.
But it would have to be by someone who voted
Right.
in the negative.
Right.
Couldn't be brought up again by
Right.
someone who voted.
But there is an ability to petition for town meeting to bring it right to a town vote. There is that legal ability. But then, I gotta say, sorry, I know I'm speaking in turn, that puts the town of Old Saybrook Department of Police Services, using their legal line item budget, fighting the Board of Finance over God, really? Over a matter of just putting it on the agenda for the town meeting, for an up or down
Guys, we
vote?
legal budget.
I mean, you guys, you cut my legal budget. Brad said, come back if you got a big issue. I got a big issue, Brad. The Board of Finance won't let me spend $90,000 to get a $400,000 vote.
Chief.
But it's you that say this. Look, guys,
What objection do you have to waiting 2 weeks?
here's my objection. So far tonight, we have spent more time discussing this grant than you guys spend on 99% of the issues that are brought in front of
Why
you.
don't we spend that time on your budget?
You- On the police department budget, right? So at some point, I get a little complex over police issues in front of the Board of Finance, and I think it's almost justified. Second of all, here's my objection. All we're asking is to go to town meeting. That's it. Why are you objecting to letting the people have a voice? I don't get that, John. I get if you're passionately against this and it's your sole decision, vote your conscience. But as an elected official, I think that you have a duty and obligation to let the people decide. I want you to come to that town meeting. I want you to raise your hand. I want the moderator to call on you. I want you to get behind the podium and say, I'm John O'Brien. I sit on the Board of Finance, and I think this is wrong. You have that right, just like everyone else in town is going to have that right that night. And then we vote. And if it passes, it passes. And I'll bring you on a voyage. I don't know if you're coming back, but I'll bring you. If it doesn't pass, it's done.
But using the logic, you don't need a Board of Finance. Take everything to a town meeting.
Listen, I do need the Board of Finance because that's how our charter is read. If you refuse it, I have a policing responsibility.
It gives us the right to cast a vote.
Exactly.
So that's the process.
But because we live in America, there's also issues around the process that you can use if things are denied. If you deny this tonight, if you deny the people their vote, because now we have two issues. We have an issue of the police capital need, the vote, and we have the issue of denying taxpayers the right to a voice and a vote. And I tell you, for those that aren't passionate about the police department, are damn well going to be passionate about their vote being taken or their say being taken away from them. So as an elected official, I think it's your duty, it's your obligation to voice your opinion, pass it to town meeting, let people say yay or nay, and then the issue goes either way, and we accept it like everything else that happens in a democratic society. Not allowing to happen is just, I would call it a sin. You don't take, in the United States of America, you don't take away someone's voice. My job is based on the United States Constitution every day, John. And our form of government gives people that voice. Your board should pass it through them.
I don't see any problem delaying the vote for 2 weeks.
Well, but you didn't have a problem voting no tonight, right? So your yes vote only brings it to the people.
So there's a motion to reconsider the vote. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm saying.
What are you doing?
I'm a
One
no.
aye. Okay. So the
Your yes?
motion to reconsider the vote has passed.
Yes, 4-2. Okay.
I would make a motion to approve the port security grant, moving to the town meeting an appropriation of $361,570 for the port security grant in order for the Department of Police Services to acquire a boat, which ultimately would cost the town of Old Saybrook $90,393. That's a second?
You're seconding it.
Who's seconding?
Second.
This is a new motion.
It's a new motion. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, we know that's gotta go forward. I'm against it because I'm afraid you're gonna grow it, and that's my biggest fear of the whole thing. So if that goes to the public, and they feel the same way I feel, they're gonna vote against it.
That's correct.
But don't bring a bunch of people in uniform to intimidate the people in the meeting, because it's always a show of hands, and that really bothers me. But every time you want something, we stack a town meeting, and if people are concerned, they should come to this town meeting, and I hope you put it in the paper, Becky, because that's what it's all about. It's not about a town meeting where we stack it with fire department, police department to get a vote. It's what do the people really feel about how we're running our budget?
Here,
And I'm concerned about growing it, that's all.
I
So
stood
I'll-
up in front of a whole audience and said no to SROs. And all the police force was there.
And I still say no.
So,
That's not-
I don't think there's
that's
an
not-
intimidation, but, I asked you guys,
But
when
those
we
guys
voted
at the
for
meeting are
preserve,
taxpayers.
we voted
Because they choose to
for-
serve.
Sir?
When we voted for the preserve, we voted for the turf, I can't remember what other bonding we had. You guys said that you wanted to let it go to the town people. It was a bonding, $10 million, $1 million, $3 million. We're talking $90,000 pretty much, just. And that was your statement, let this go to the people. And that's what we're just asking, let this go to the people, that is our job.
Any further discussion?
Any comment?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Who's opposed? You
How did you vote?
I will vote affirmative at this time.
do? Okay.
4-1.
Who's it?
Motion passes. 5-1.
5-1.
5-1.
Thank you, everyone.
That was easy. Where's that staple part?
So do I get the stateroom now?
Motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I tell you what, make an appointment. I'm going to make an appointment.